One of the daily questions that I get is like, I'm not getting enough chlorine. Can I use sanitizer to shock a hot tub? And that answer to that question is absolutely yes, you can. I'm a hot spring girl. I have a hot spring in my backyard. I love the hot spring. Hello, hello, hello. Hey, hot tubbers. How is everybody doing today? We are going to do the hot tub stream, and today it's just open mic, and we're just ask me questions, and I am going to answer them today. So if you're on board today, we are glad you're here. I'm going to read some questions that you guys have left me on questions on different videos, and you guys ask your questions. So this goes from here. I'm going to start with Benjamin Nutting. He just this morning asked a question: does the Icare system require cartridges to be changed, or is this a one-time investment and just enjoy the benefits? So I don't know if you guys are paying attention to the forums or any of that type of thing, but Finn actually went, they're no longer. So Finn is a direct competitor to Icare, and you guys all know I love, and this is the greatest thing ever. I know Tiffany's got one. I know Kayla's got one. These things are amazing. They tell you absolutely everything that you need to know about your hot tub. They let you know when they let you know if the temperature drops too low. They let you know if you need to shock your hot tub. They let you know if your sanitizer is too low. They're really pretty awesome, and they send you notifications directly to your phone, and it's really amazing. But anyway, their direct competitor, which was Finn, they're no longer. They send out emails to people, and they actually were a subscription service where you actually had to pay a subscription, and then they would monitor your hot tub for you. Now with the Icare, that is not the case. You don't have to worry about that in any way, shape, or form. So it's kind of cool that it just does that, and they're still in business, and they are doing fantastic, and there is no subscription fee, so they're fantastic. But to answer Benjamin's question, no, there are no cartridges that you have to change. There's nothing along that lines. There are some sensors on those hot tubs or on those Icares. Those are replaceable, so if you ever have an issue that you need to replace those, you want to do that. But if they otherwise, there's no pieces or parts or subscriptions or any other fee. You buy it one time, and then the Icare works for you fantastic. So that's a good way to go. Now you can share your code with me, and I can actually pay attention to what's going on with your hot tub as well. So that's a nice feature as well. So that's going to answer that question. So Cindy asked a question yesterday, and she wants to know, Cindy Hofs, and she says, what do you do to make sure the latches don't break on my hot tub in the elements? I don't want them to break. And so what she's talking about is you have your hot tub cover, and you latch that down, and then the wind blows and that types of thing. And if the situations like in Kentucky, which I'm sorry, there's just nothing we can do about that, but the wind will blow, and it'll blow those covers open, and that's really something that you don't want to happen. And so number one, there's some latches on those covers, and you just want to make sure that those are attached. And if a storm is coming, I highly recommend attaching all four. I know our delivery guys don't always put the back two on, especially if you have a cover lifter. If you have a cover lifter, you're typically okay, because the cover lifter screws into the sides of those covers, and that kind of solves that situation. So you don't have to worry about the back side, but make sure that the front side is clipped in. Very rarely do they break because of the wind when they're clipped in, but what I have seen is situations where you've only clipped in one or one corner, and then the wind will get up underneath it, and then it'll rip it. There are some things called hurricane straps. Kayla, if you could maybe put a link in the description or a link in the comments there, but hurricane straps you can get they come from Amazon, or you can call us at the store. We can definitely get you taken care of. But what those are straps that really just go over the top of the cover, and you can put those on, and those keep, if the wind's blowing really bad or the wind's coming at the right direction, those will keep that on that cover as well. So that's kind of a cool feature to get taken care of there. So Brian Ashcroft asked the question 3 days ago, and he says, this is a great video, and this was on the clean the hot tubs in clean the filters in a hot tub. clean your hot tub filters in the dishwasher. And his question was, what about spot remover in the dishwasher? So if you're putting something like Finish or something like that in your dishwasher, and you're throwing in those hot tub filters, and you turn that dishwasher on, you probably don't want to use the wash cycle on that. You just want to use the rinse only cycle, because you don't want that spot remover to be getting on those filters, because that'll cause soap and film in the hot tub down the road. So that's kind of a big deal. So make sure that you are not doing that as well. Proper way to shock a hot tub. Jacque Reinstedler, 4 days ago, she asked, can I use sanitizer to shock a hot tub? And that answer to that question is absolutely yes, you can. Now, the difference between using chlorine to shock your hot tub and using shock to shock your hot tub is sanitizers they work. So the whole purpose of getting to a shock system is you got to get the chlorine to what we call breakpoint chlorine. So the reason that you shock a hot tub, whether you're using chlorine or bromine or salts or anything like that, is those molecules get binded up. So you got your chlorine molecule, it's floating around here doing its thing, and then you got your nitrogen or whatever other molecule that's floating around here. This chlorine molecule attacks this nitrogen molecule, and it just keeps beating on it, destroys that. Eventually, if there's enough nitrogen or enough bad stuff in the hot tub, it'll actually wrap around that chlorine molecule, and it becomes what we call a combined molecule. And once it becomes that combined molecule, this chlorine molecule is no longer effective. And if it's bromine, it's still effective, but not as effective as it once was. But if it's a chlorine molecule, it's no longer effective. And what happens is that's when you start smelling chlorine or smelling bromine. And I've said this to you guys before. You walk into a hotel and you can smell the swimming pool, and you're like, oh, the pool's got to be in great shape. No, that's actually really bad when you can smell that, because that means all those molecules are tied up. So as they're tied up, you got to break that apart. And to do that, you got to get to what we call breakpoint chlorine, and thus shock. And so when you're shocking that, to get to a breakpoint chlorine or bromine, you've got to get to 10 part per million of either free chlorine or free bromine. Once you do that, that breaks apart these two molecules. This nitrogen molecule flows up in the air and it's gone. And then this chlorine molecule is floating around again, and it's hunting down new nitrogen and the stuff there. So that's kind of what happens there. So you can get there with both shock, which is an oxidizer. Monopersulfate is what does that. My favorite is enhanced shock, which has got a tiny little bit of chlorine in it as well. However, that has been really hard to get a hold of right now. That's a BioGuard product, and we haven't been able to get a hold of that for a little bit. So the fact that we can't get a hold of that, we're just using regular shock these days. So we're using monopersulfate. So the question is can I use chlorine to do that? You definitely can use chlorine to shock your hot tub. The key is to get to a 10 part per million of free chlorine. Once you do that, then you're good. Now, the difference between shock, which is monopersulfate, and chlorine's an actual sanitizer. It takes quite a bit longer for that chlorine to actually dissipate down. So you could have a really high chlorine reading for quite a while. And so if you just use the shock, if you just use the shock, that goes in, it does its thing, it raises the chlorine really fast, then it gases off. So it actually oxidizes out of the hot tub. And then, so it's really important that the cover is off. But once you do that, everything is absolutely fantastic. And you're moving forward and doing your thing, and it works really, really well. How to balance hot tub water. Eldon Ashburg, 4 days ago. I have a question. I've been using test strips and thought that the chemicals were sort of under control. I bought a chemical test kit and hardly anything matches. Which one is correct? Well, that's kind of a loaded question, because there are really good test strips out there. There are really good test kits out there. There are really good Icare systems out there, like over there in the corner. But there are things out there that test a little differently. The one thing that I am not a fan of, if you're going to use a test kit, with the drops and that type of stuff, I am not a fan of the OTO and Phenol Red. Phenol Red's okay, but OTO test strips, so those are the little yellow drops you put into the vial and it turns yellow. All that is measuring is total chlorine. So you can have a 20 part per million of total chlorine and have absolutely zero sanitizer in that hot tub. So when I was talking before about that combined molecule, that OTO tests how much of that total chlorine is in there. So, but there's nothing in there actually killing anything. So there's no good sanitizer in there. So it's really important, no matter what you're using as a testing kit, whether it's the test strips, and I like the test strips because those all test free chlorine, and that's a big deal. If you're using a test kit, I highly recommend getting one that has a DPD tablet. If you're using the tablets, you're fine. You're testing free chlorine. You can also test total chlorine with those, and then you can tell how far apart and how much shock you actually have to put into that hot tub or swimming pool. So they're actually really super accurate, but you've got to get the ones with the tablets and not the drops, because the drops do not measure the free chlorine, and free chlorine is, oh my gosh, important. Kayla, my pH and alkalinity is still super high after a week. What can I do to get it lowered into range? So that's a great question. Those two chemicals, alkalinity and pH, are tied together in the hot tub. And so if one goes up, the other's going to go up. And if one goes down, the other's going to go down. So the number one and most important thing to test is your alkalinity. Alkalinity is the buffer for absolutely everything else. If you've got high alkalinity, you've got to get that in line. If you got, your sanitizers are going to work better. Everything is going to be better if you get that alkalinity in line. Again, you want to be between 80 and 120. I've seen ranges as high as 40 to 180. You can work in those ranges, but you got to get that in line. Now, Kayla was saying that her pH and alkalinity are both high. I need her to ignore her pH and very slowly add pH decreaser every single day until she gets that alkalinity in line. If the alkalinity is not in line, she is going to you're never going to get it in line. So ignore that pH, get that alkalinity in line. Once you get that alkalinity in line, if that pH drops too low, you may have to add a little bit of pH increaser and bump that up just a tiny little bit. So I hope that explained that a little bit, but that's super important. Alkalinity is the most important thing out of all of them. Those of you on Icare are going to come back and say, well, they don't measure alkalinity on my Icare. This is a true statement. They do not measure alkalinity. But because it tells you exactly what to put into the hot tub, it's really good. It is measuring alkalinity, and it is giving you the proper adjustments to do so. The only thing that I would maybe disagree with on the Icare is sometimes if your alkalinity is too high, it'll give you a really big dose of pH decreaser to do it one time, and I would actually recommend that into three or four doses daily. You want to do them every day, but I do recommend that, because if you put too much in at one time, you're definitely gonna bottom out that alkalinity really, really quickly. Tiffany, Tiffany, any other test strips good for testing hardness? I have a hard time reading the fresh water, and I can't tell if my water is too soft or just right. Test strips are the best. You can get a Taylor test kit on that, and they do test the hardness on those as well. So that is a big deal. I would actually recommend, Tiffany, probably in your case, is using going to the dealer or using the test strips. My favorite test strips are the Hot Spring 5-way test strips. If you can't get a hold of those, I'm a big fan of the Aqua Check, the yellow capped one. Those are really good. And if you guys are on, there's a lot of you guys in here on the At Ease system, and those, I love those test strips. And in fact, before Hot Spring changed their test strip to read a lower chlorine reading, on my recommendation, by the way, I'm just gonna throw that out there. But before they changed that, where those 5-way test strips started reading a 0.5 part per million of chlorine, I actually had most of my saltwater customers using the At Ease test strips. And the good thing about those that I absolutely love is they test free chlorine, but they only test like 0.5 or higher, and you either have chlorine or you don't have chlorine. You don't have a sliding scale like you do on everything else, which I kind of like because I do think people get a little hung up on it sometimes. So that's kind of a big deal. Tiffany, if you're at least a 25 part per million of hardness, you're going to be fine. And that's where we need to be. And raising hardness is so easy compared to lowering hardness. So raising hardness is a piece of cake. You get a little calcium hardness increaser. It actually, Tiffany, in your case, you're just going to add a little bit of water, but just, like a couple capfuls of calcium hardness decreaser, 1 bottle of calcium hardness increaser is going to last all of you guys like 2 years because you use just such a tiny little bit of it. Here in the Midwest, we have very rare cases of high or low hardness, so most people have to actually lower their hardness, but that's kind of the situation there. Alex, 8 days ago, says, I'm ready to get a hot tub. What kind do you or have you recommended? I am 100% every single time going to tell you to go with a hot spring hot tub. Now, with that being said, I sell so many brands. I literally have quite a few. Right now I sell Hot Spring, I sell the Limelight, I sell the Hot Spot, I sell Artesian, I sell Dream Maker, I sell Hydropool. So there's a lot. I have a lot of brands out there. I'm a hot spring girl. I have a hot spring in my backyard. I love the hot spring. Highly recommend it. Do you think you guys should get that? If you don't have a hot spring, Caldera is a really good hot tub as well. And I don't even sell Calderas. So that tells you how I feel about those. But a hot tub is better than no hot tub. And the benefits that you get from a hot tub are absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. So keep that in mind, and you are gonna be really, really good. Tiffany, I do really like the Icare. I love that it gives me the numbers and I don't have to color match, right? I mean, that's amazing. Have you sent me your code so I can kind of keep an eye on your Icare as well? You know that you can do that, right? That you can actually, if you send me a picture of if you go to share the Icare code, actually I'll just show you because it's kind of fun. So if you go to the Icare, and then once that opens up, you're gonna go hit those three things right there, and then if you hit the share right there, then there's that QR code right there. If you send me a picture of that via Instagram, I can scan that, and it's only good for, you gotta let me know you're doing it because it's only good for a couple of hours. But if you share that with me, I can actually keep track of your hot tub. But I can actually, these are all the different Icares that I am paying attention to at the moment. So that's kind of cool. I can kind of keep track of what's going on with everybody's Icare. Let's see. Anthony says, I love your videos. I have learned so very much helpful tips. Just bought a house with a 6-person bullfrog. Pretty excited to get in and fire that up. Yes, we've had a conversation, and I am going to help him out with that once he gets going. So I'm excited to help him out with that. Okay, Bill Kleintz, great video on one of the best out there, and this is on when do I change my salt cell. I continuously have low chlorine levels even when all my other measurements are in range. I've been adding chlorine concentrate and barely get it up to where it should be. Should I be running the boost cycle instead? That is an awesome question, and honestly, one of the daily questions that I get is like, I'm not getting enough chlorine, I'm not getting enough chlorine. The truth of the matter is a saltwater hot tub only creates 1.5 teaspoons of chlorine in a 24-hour period. And if you're behind on chlorine, you're never, ever, ever going to get caught up. So the best way for me to describe it is it's literally kind of like a checking account. If you overdraw that checking account, let's say you overdraw the checking account by $100 and you only put in $50, you're still overdrawn. And not only are you still overdrawn, you're actually now also getting overdraw fees. So you're actually adding to that negative balance. So on a saltwater hot tub, if you're never getting to where you need to get, you're adding to the problem. So like before, when I was talking about shocking the hot tub, we've got to get to breakpoint chlorine on that hot tub. And what I've actually started with a lot of my new customers is on the first 3 days of having your hot tub, because guess what? We all get really excited when we first get a hot tub and we use it a lot, which is awesome. But when you first get your hot tub, when you start on a saltwater hot tub, I actually have them put in 3 teaspoons of chlorine every single day for the first 3 days to get that base built up. And then once we do that, they take off, man. I'm telling you, they work really, really well. But you've got to have a good base of chlorine in that hot tub to get started. And if you don't have that base and you're negative, you're just never going to get caught up. It's just, yes, you're adding a teaspoon and a half of chlorine every day, but if you're behind, you're never going to catch it. If you guys ever get a second, take a minute to watch my after party cleanup video. That video will blow your mind, because we had a party in our hot tub. Neighbors were over. They were over all night. They had a great time. But it took a lot to clean that hot tub up. Like, I videoed it because I'm like, people need to see how much actually it takes. And it took more than I thought it would take. But we did save it, and it worked really, really well. So Kayla, we've been contemplating from going away from the Addies, chlorine, and going to bromine. What are the pros and cons, and what do I need to do to switch? Great question. I am a chlorine fan, and I would recommend that you stay on chlorine, but you can definitely go to bromine. Pros and cons, the bromine is a super acidic chemical, and it's pretty harsh. It works really well, but it is pretty harsh. So if you're on bromine, you're going to constantly be raising that pH and alkalinity, because it is going to drive it down, and it's going to drive it down quickly. If you are on chlorine, that's a little more neutral, and it does work better in the ranges. Chlorine works really well in the ranges that you should work. I personally feel that bromine has a smell to it that I do not find pleasant. However, a lot of people really, really like the bromine. Now, you can switch from chlorine to bromine, no problem. So if you start adding bromine to a chlorine hot tub, let's say you ran out of chlorine one time and you started adding bromine to that hot tub, that's great. There's no issues, but you have now turned that chlorine hot tub into a bromine hot tub. The bromine will take over, and it will actually, all the chlorine that comes in from future will actually turn into a bromine hot tub. And the only way to change that back is to drain it. And now if you have a bromine hot tub and you want to go to chlorine, you do have to drain that hot tub and start fresh to do so. So if you're on bromine, you're bromine. Even if you add chlorine, even if you had a whole bunch of chlorine, you're still a bromine hot tub. There's no ways around it. So I have a lot of customers on bromine. They do seem to enjoy it. I'm a chlorine girl. I've always been a chlorine girl. There was a time period there where, gosh, I think like 2013 or so, Hot Springs went bromine, and I tried. Trust me, I tried. I did what I was supposed to do. I was a good little girl, but man, I hated every minute of it. I was not a fan of bromine, and I'm just not. But there are people out there who really, really, really enjoy it. So hi from sunny Iowa, Kayla. My husband has a thyroid problem, and his doctor said absolutely no bromine, so we use chlorine. Bromine's pretty harsh. It works. It's a great sanitizer, but it is very, very, it's very strong, and it's pretty harsh. And so you really got to pay attention to what you're doing and how you're doing it on there. So just a couple, I think I kind of got through most of that. Anybody getting any new, hot tub accessories for their hot tub for Christmas? I'm telling you guys, you need to get those snow melting mats. If you live someplace where it gets cold and the concrete gets cold, the snow melting mats, they're for the roof of your house. Spa Retail Magazine just did a big, huge article on them, but they are, oh my gosh, I've been selling hot tubs for 20 years and I can't believe that I didn't use these before, but they are amazing, and they warm your feet. It's just like a giant heating pad for the concrete, and they're for the roof of the house, but you can walk on them and they're fantastic, and you don't have to melt the snow, and it's a big deal. I did get the towel warmer, and I just see that Tiffany said that she wanted to get the towel warmer. The towel warmer is fantastic. If you have to pick between one or two, I would get the snow melting mats first. They are wow. Let's see, what has Bill got? Colorless grit and the water line, and some foaming appears when the salt cartridge is near the end of life. Chemicals are balanced, phosphates are low, 50 part per billion, salt level is good. Any ideas? Where's your hardness? That would 100% be my question. Is your hardness is going to be probably harder than it should be, and that's what's going to cause the grit and the foaming too as well. So I would recommend checking out your hardness. You want to be between 25 and 75 part per million on your hardness. If you're higher than that, I would get the on-the-go water softener or the Vanishing Act. Either one of those two will help get that down to where it needs to be. You can use stain and scale to do that, but it will raise your phosphates to do so. Tiffany, yes, you're supposed to check for phosphates. And in fact, we're having a big meeting about phosphates on Wednesday with the factory. I actually am going to have to miss that meeting because I have a funeral to go to, but that was my number one question, was phosphates. Phosphates do matter. And if you're really struggling with your saltwater system, you can mess with phosphates. I personally don't make a huge deal about phosphates unless I'm getting a lot of foam. If I'm getting a lot of foam, then I start thinking about phosphates. Now, here's the deal on phosphates. Phosphates come from everything, absolutely everything. The detergent in your swimsuit, the shampoo in your hair, the lotions on your body, the stain and scale that you add to the hot tub. Some of the enzyme removers have phosphates in them, so it's really important to check your chemical and get rid of those phosphates. I've been in the chemical world for a very, very long time, and the phosphates what phosphates are is they're food for algae. Well, you're not getting algae in your hot tub, at least you shouldn't be. If you are, please drain it and start fresh. But you shouldn't be getting algae in your hot tub, and so that's kind of where they are. In some ways, I kind of feel that phosphates are a marketing gimmick, because on phosphates, you can never get rid of them. I mean, you can get them down for a little bit, but they'll be back. I 100% guarantee that they'll be back. So that is an easy way for those of us that sell chemicals that is an easy thing for us to tell you. If we can't figure out what's wrong with your water, we just tell you that your phosphates are too high, because we can not only can we tell you your phosphates are too high and you need to put some phosphate remover in, then I can sell you another chemical to raise those phosphates right back up. I struggle with phosphates. I struggle with phosphates quite a bit. They do affect salt systems, and if I will tell you, there's been a few situations when I can't get somebody's salt system under control. We lower their phosphates and everything seems to be fine. It is the last ditch effort for me though before I start messing with phosphates. It's just I don't totally 100% jump on board on that. Jimbo, I heard that if the phosphates are high, it shortens the life of the salt cell. Is there any truth in that? Sure, yeah, there's some truth in that. Phosphates, yeah, can shorten the life of the salt cell. It's just also really, really hard to get rid of phosphates. So the amount of money that you're spending trying to get rid of phosphates, you might as well just leave the salt cell in there and just not mess with it. That's my take on it. I have a big meeting on phosphates here, and I may come back next week and be like, because by the time I watch it on the replay and telling you guys all completely different. I've just been in the industry for a really long time, and keep an eye on your phosphates. Don't live and die on phosphates. Do not 100%. They're not the end all be all. They're important, but they're the last thing that you need to worry about on your saltwater hot tub. So the things and the order that you need to worry about on your saltwater hot tub: alkalinity first. Alkalinity is number 1. pH is number 2. So those are your number one and number 2. Number 3 is hardness. If you don't have your hardness dialed in on a saltwater hot tub, it's just not going to work. 100% it is not going to work. So if you got heavy metal and high hardness in your saltwater hot tub, not going to work. Have to fix that. The next step is the salt level. Obviously, you don't want to get over 1750 part per million on your salt system, because it's not going to work. And then you want to keep your sanitizer level at a good level. Some things that I've been trying recently, and I'm just going to share them with you guys because you're here. Some things I've been trying recently to extend the life of those salt cells is to actually soak them in a 1 to 4 part per million, a pH decreaser to water. So, and you can use muriatic acid if you want. You guys just know how I feel about muriatic acid. I'm not a fan of it, but if you do soak those in there for about 10-15 minutes after about once a month, I'm hearing it makes those salt cells last longer. I don't have enough data to say that that's actually the case. They also say that low phosphates will make your salt cells last longer. I can't see I've seen any evidence that is the case either, but I can also say that I've seen salt cells not last as long. And there was a period there that salt cells were going out very, very quickly. And that was probably about a year ago. I don't know if we've figured it out on our end on what to tell people what to do, or if Watkins has figured it out, but we really aren't having issues with salt cells not lasting that long anymore. It seems to be doing okay. Keep things in line, keep that salt in line, and keep that hardness in line, and it seems that those salt cells are working really, really, really well. So let's see, Tiffany, I had to soak my salt cell in pH decreaser and it removed that buildup. Tiffany, did it work? I mean, were you able to, if you guys could have seen what I saw, I'm amazed if that actually worked and that salt cell worked after that buildup. So, but if it did, that's great. That is absolutely awesome. My suggestion to her was to ask for a new salt cell, but if she got that to work, that's awesome. So, I mean, it's something you guys can try. I mean, I know if I pull out, and I know I have a video in there somewhere. I think it's the when to change your salt cell. But I pull that salt cell out, and you can see the calcium buildup on that. That cell was 4 months old, so I didn't even try to save it. So, but I have been on my current cell. I have been trying to do the acid soak a little bit just to see what happens. And when Hot Springs used to have the ACE salt cells, we used to tell people, because those cells weren't disposable, and we would actually have people soak those salt cells once every 3 months and for about 15 minutes, and it would extend the life of those cells. So it only makes sense that it would work. Jimbo says, maybe I have picked the wrong chemical balance that causes a cell only to get 2 months. Chemical balance will definitely affect the salt cell. For sure. If you have a too low pH, too low of alkalinity, that'll definitely make that salt cell not last as long. We've been really focusing on hardness. That has been probably the biggest thing that we've done in our dealership to make those salt cells last longer. That has probably been the number one change that we 100%, you have to be below 75 part per million to make those salt cells work. So that seems to be a huge factor there. I mean, it's really made a big difference. So just something to check out. Give it a try. And there is going to be 1 or 2 that may not last 3 months, but for the most part, I would say I've been on the freshwater salt system on my current hot tub. I am on year 3. I'm on year 3 with my Grandy that I have right now, and that's the salt system. And I was on, I actually beta tested the salt system on a different hot tub that I had before, and I've only had 1 cell not make it in the time frame that it should have. Again, I understand water balance, and I keep my water balance properly, and that's a big deal. And it's just, if you keep that water balance, just buy an Icare, guys. That'll solve the problem. But keep that alkalinity and pH in line, and keep that chlorine level where it needs to be. And I think your salt cells will last just fine. Tiffany is answering my question. She did partially drain, but I think our salt level was too high was the reason that we had to do that. Everything seemed fine. It really dropped the hardness, reduced the salt, and the pH is down. It seems fine. Yeah, I think because your salt level was pretty high, and that's a big deal. If I could give you guys any tip, especially you saltwater customers out there, if I can give you any tip at all, when the freshwater salt system tells you to add salt, do not add salt. That is probably the biggest mistake that we see. The biggest first time mistake that we see from saltwater hot tub owners is they'll see that scale or that dial, they'll see that needle move, and they'll think that needle's going to stay where it needs to stay, and you've got to. It went down a little bit, so you just automatically add more salt. That's the last thing you should do. Don't ever add, once you get the salt into your hot tub, don't ever add more salt until you drain it and start over. So once you get that salt, you're gonna test it with the salt test strip, not with the hot tub itself. With the salt test strip, you're gonna test that. If it tells you need more salt at that point, then you can do it. But otherwise, I would not add any salt to the hot tub. Because if you get that salt level too high, those salt systems will not work. And salt cannot leave the hot tub. The only way salt can leave the hot tub is with a drain. So if you have to evaporate water, that salt didn't leave. Water left, but salt didn't leave. So the only way you can lose salt out of that hot tub is for it to physically drain out. So you never have to add salt. That I would say 99.9% of the time it is the cell and not the salt system. But what that hot spring salt system measures is it measures the life of the cell and how much salt is in the water. So you guys have seen there's two blades that come down, and then there's an electric current that runs between those two blades. And if it's not getting good connection, it's going to say that the salt level drops. Well, and if you start getting calcium buildup on those two blades, it's going to make that calcium, or make that connectivity between those two, it's going to make that drop. And as that drops, that scale is going to go down, and that's going to cause issues. So always check your salt with the salt test strip before you actually add salt to the hot tub, and even take it into your dealer and have them check it if you're questioning it. It is never the salt, never ever the salt. Tiffany says she's going to check her salt cell regularly. I highly recommend that, Tiffany. That would be a good thing. Honestly, I don't think it's a bad idea to check it once every 6 weeks or so. Bill, because the saltwater hot tubs use soft water, because the saltwater hot tubs use soft water, do saltwater hot tubs have, I don't even know that word, propensity to create a bit more sudsing compared to non-salt tubs? Absolutely. That is probably the biggest downfall of a saltwater hot tub. You are going to get more foam in a saltwater hot tub. Just like when you put a water softener in your house and it feels like you can't get the shampoo out of your hair. That's what's going on there. There is the surface tension on that salt on the water is softer, and the whole purpose of it is to make your soap wetter. So when you have a soft water in your hot tub, and in that water, you're gonna get more bubbles, and a lot more bubbles, and it's definitely gonna foam up. One of the complaints that I get a lot on saltwater hot tubs is after 2 or 3, 4 uses, when the jets are on, the air in the hot tub seems to make more bubbles, makes it more effervescent would be the word, and that's just because being a soft water, that's what's going to cause that to happen. So that's definitely how that works. So, but great point, and thank you for bringing that up. That is a huge deal. So I do have Buy Me a Coffee. If you guys want to go there and throw some support that way, that would be totally appreciated. That helps support the channel. That helps me get new gear. Helps me do fun things back here makes my studio work better, which didn't work all that great today, but you know, hey, we got there and did what we needed to do. You guys can find me on Facebook, the Hot Tub Lady on Facebook. I have a Facebook page. I would absolutely love it if you guys would come join me over there, and we would definitely take care of you there. And always, as always, if you guys have any questions, get a hold of me on Instagram, PM me on Instagram. It is the Hot Tub Lady Instagram. Follow me over there. I'd totally appreciate it. So you guys, I absolutely love you, and thank you for spending an hour of your week with me. That means the world to me, and I really, really appreciate it. But give me a thumbs up, and you guys are the absolute best. And I will see you guys next Monday. There is a video coming out Wednesday. Be sure to check that out. And just remember, guys, keep making life epic.